Hello, everybody. This is Robert Martin, founder of Magic Beans Agency. I am here today to talk to you guys about one of the constant features in our space, in our world at the moment, that of upskilling in education. I'm really happy today to be joined by Lena Marg, who many of you will already be familiar with. Lena is one of the most widely known and best known names in our industry when it comes to all things language, language technology, MT, and more recently AI. And we've been lucky enough to have her as our lead instructor on our Reclaim the Future course, our AI upskilling course, which we are running again in April of this year. Lena, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for having me. Hello, first of all.
So I'm calling from a very wet and windy Madrid today, but spring is just around the corner. So we're going to be back soon with Reclaim 4 this
Mhm.
time, back in April. And of course, the wheel keeps on turning, right? We seem
Yeah.
to be in this constant um, imperative or motion to have to keep on learning new things.
hmm
Everything keeps on moving, and there seems to be so much for us to learn and discover, right?
Yeah, it definitely does keep moving and turning. And I think, uh, as always with these kind of, I guess, disruptions as well, you can, at a higher level, you observe moods changing, right? Sort of the tone changes a bit, the temperature, the feeling around these disruptions changes, and we're moving to, progressing to new phases, I guess, of this. Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of, I don't know, what do you want to call it? It is noise in our heads, right? It feels noisy still. Like there's so much, like you said, to learn and take in. But then equally sometimes it's sort of important to try to step out of that all and assess where you are and where your upskilling starts, and that
Yeah.
might be much, much, I don't want to say basic, but I think very often, yeah, that's just really important because the noise is sometimes up here, and then actually what we need to first do is our foundations, our own foundations, and they might look very different.
Yeah. I
Mm.
think what you said just now about disruption is definitely one of the key words. We all feel like we're being disrupted
hmm
by these tech companies who come out with new features and new claims every week, by the clients who are asking for different services or cheaper services, or they're
Yeah.
saying they're going to take things in-house. And what you also mentioned there about noise is very, very relevant as well, because we live in this information culture where we're being attacked by noise or news snippets or posts or emails all of the time. And like you
Yeah.
say, it's really important for individual companies and individual teams to be able to take a step back from the noise and identify what they need to do in this moment and going
Mhm.
forward. And I think that universally we know we have to learn, we know we have to evolve. And
Mm.
one of the challenges is then how do we do it, you know? So you've had the experience of presenting and instructing on Reclaim 3, which we held between October and December. We had about 60 companies
Mhm.
taking part overall. How was the overall experience for you?
I mean, firstly, want to mention, of course, that we had also the wonderful Elaine or Corinne
That's
doing it
right.
with me. I wasn't by myself, so I'm very glad I was doing this jointly, and the Magic Beans team as well. Of course, that was great. Great to do it together. And so I think the first thing that I think comes to mind, like physically, I think, because it's a 10-week course, and we were all like, and they're like, wow. I kept saying during the course, it's, you're running a marathon, whatever. And it does, there's element to that, right? And I think in week one, you could sense that participants felt they're going to have all their questions answered in 90 minutes. And then so we had to
Hmm.
repeat them, guys. There's a bit of a journey. Like we're gonna, there's so much ground to cover. Um, so you have to kind of bear with it. So that like on a sort of mental level, you have to kind of, there's a certain element of sticking with it, and letting things sink in. And then, knowing that some topics might only come in week 7, but we did touch, I think, on all the topics that I mean, I feel we touched on a lot of topics and the topics that the audience has also brought in through their feedback forms and so, So that was first. But I think, um, yeah, what's really interesting, I guess it's good, healthy to be reminded of how diverse, this area is. And it's sort of funny. I think we call it the translation or localization industry. And then, of course, there's the comment, is it really an industry? Like in the sense that, let's say some people, some LS language service providers would support the legal industry, some support the manufacturing industry. The actual industries are, are those, and we are servicing them. But that, of course, brings a lot of diversity into the profession. So we're really talking about very different domains, and all of these domains might be affected differently in turn by all these changes in our world. And so I think in the first couple of weeks of Reclaim 3, it was really good to be reminded, okay, that we're having such different angles that people are coming from in terms of the volumes they're handling, in terms of the tools, although the tools were surprisingly, I would say, similar. I think that's what's interesting as well to see. Um, but then for some, it's more a challenge of my languages aren't actually there yet. People are pushing for AI, but really, my languages are so novel that it's just not, it doesn't work. And I need a tool to explain that to my customers because they're expecting something that is unreal. And then on the other hand, we had people who are working in very established industries, but that are being so disrupted and all the volumes breaking away. And sort of how do you deal with that? So, and sort of trying to kind of create a space where all these companies feel um, willing to share, maybe, and discovering, despite the diversity, the common grounds. What are the questions that we have, and how can we hopefully, build a foundation or build on everybody's foundation to raise their conversation, as it were, for them individually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel, like you said, that the idea of this course really is to give the LSPs and the different team members the
Mhm.
confidence that they need to approach these topics with conviction, with
Yeah.
evidence, with peace of mind that they are retaining their position of expert or of leader, right? Because
Mm.
again, the claims out there can be lofty and sometimes over exaggerated. Like
Yeah.
you said, for some language combinations, the technology isn't there yet. And in many cases, you know, the clients have expectations. They want us still to come up with bright ideas and innovative pricing and great proposals, but we have to deal
Mm.
with the realities as well, which can be sometimes
Yeah.
quite different.
Mm.
S- So, I mean, it sounds you're a runner as well, right? So it was a bit of a marathon for you. Um,
Yeah.
not a
Unfortunately, just
small
had to
task.
sack off
10
a half
weeks
of it.
of
Mm.
intense content.
Yeah.
What what struck you much? What struck you the most in terms of how people engaged with the content? Were they interactive? Were they asking questions? Were they defensive maybe about the position that AI is encroaching in their lives?
Um, Good question. I think for me it was interesting. I think I said at the time, like I wear very much at least two hats these days, right? So I spend 2 days a week teaching children, 7-year-olds. So I'm face to face in a room full of bouncy kids, like full of emotions and anger and joy or whatever. And then to be back in this virtual space of, 60 plus companies online. Obviously the engagement feels very different, for me,
Mhm.
just on a very personal level. Um, but the I think, so we had some participants, I think that's quite common, that were sort of maybe more engaging in the homework. Like, we offer optional homework. I mean, that's the format of Reclaim that as you created it. And so some people were very active in that and sort of took that on board and said, okay, we'll do this and we'll share what we are doing and where we're stuck, which I think is obviously the most effective way to learn. And also really kind of showed us again how, I mean, how advanced some people quite frankly are, sort of it's really great because I think people tend to think maybe imposter syndrome, like, I don't want to share because I don't know anything. But actually, everybody who did share brought something valuable to the table. Like from every single example, there was something we could then extrapolate from for the rest of the audience. I think that is, again, I mean, we all know this. We say this to school children. Every question is a good question, but as adults, we then get too embarrassed or whatever. So I think, so engagement is, obviously as probably say is, again, I mean, I've kind of alluded to that already there, but I think reclaim, in my eyes, is not necessarily, it's not um, the space for, it's not like for the tech disruptors. Like innovation, yes, lots of innovative, creative minds, but this is not supposed to be the space where we all vibe code or something, whatever. So we're coming together to bring everybody along, to uplift everybody. I mean, that's the whole point. So I think it's supposed to be a space where you can ask those questions that, like, you've tried a bit, maybe you've done some AI for a bit, but you'd like to have a sounding board, like you're stuck now, or you're not sure, are you asking the right questions? Are you you're stuck in a contract with a whatever TMS provider, and you actually quite don't understand what it is you could be doing in that platform. So it's very basic, day-to-day kind of mundane questions sometimes, but that could really be transformed if you share them and if you change certain setups. So I think that's where we're coming from. And so engagement again, I think is hopefully people feel safe to share. And I think every time people did share and ask questions, that was very valuable. We had a really great unexpected session we had a session on talent, huge topic. Actually turns out I think that what was really a topic that stood out for me last time, that people are unsure about this transformation, if they need to transform or if they choose to transform, I guess. How do they bring everybody along? What do they
Mm.
do with their existing talent? Do they have to recruit? And there was definitely a sense that they all felt we now have to hire ML engineers or whatever. We now have to have these and these. And sort of talking about that, like what talent do you actually have? And reassessing the gold that they have very likely in their freelance database and all these people, all these professionals they're working with, but looking at that maybe with fresh eyes, and also inviting these people to come with ideas and inviting them into the conversation and stuff. And I think that was a good session because there was tension in the room. There was tension in the room in terms of not knowing how to go forward, how to go about it. People maybe, like you said, feeling a bit defensive on,
Mm.
their own professionalism and what is AI doing and how can we move forward. Overall, I think not so much defensiveness, but maybe obviously, worry, right? Everybody is worried. And you could sense that, I think, in the room sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. There's always like a conflict between this curiosity that you mentioned before, which I think is very healthy these days. Like it's good for us to be
Yeah.
curious about how the technologies work, and the fear factor or the pressure that people are under as well, right? But what you
Mm.
just alluded to there was that in general, sometimes the solution it's within your people, the people that you have
Yeah.
on your team. I mean, a lot of our LSP community have built teams over the years. They have people that they've worked with year in, year out that they trust, that they know. Okay, some of those people are going to be more resistant than others to
Mm.
change. But as you said, there's a lot of institutional knowledge that these people have already. And so if you can get them to engage with the new technologies,
Mm.
whether yeah, and support them in kind of
Mhm.
creating the safe space, like you say, to engage, then they're able to work together to find a path forward, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and also like, just to add, I'm obviously not saying you should not whatever, you should not engage with NLP or not NLP because I from my own perspective, I think that was some of the most rewarding exchanges is because I am a linguist personally, like from by training, right? And so I've always learned a lot personally from the exchanges with the NLP and engineers and sort of, I bring a certain knowledge to the table and so do they. And it's that combination that makes it. But I fully understand, of course, that not every company out there can hire people that are currently quite expensive sometimes,
So
So,
if you were
so
to start your LSP tomorrow, then what kind of team would you hire? Would you have like a linguistic person, a technology person? What would your dream team look like right now?
For me personally, yeah, probably I would have somebody who I think quality is a big topic, right? Clients are all, it still remains sort of a bit I don't know, I'll call it the holy grail, but sort of the whole conversation of uh, how to not solve, but defining quality strategies, defining thresholds, risk, all of it around it, like because ultimately, like you said in the very beginning, a lot of companies wish they could just press a button and have it all automated. It's not really for many things that doesn't work. And to an extent, that's because I don't know, because how do you understand quality if you're going into 60 markets and you don't even speak one foreign language? I'm sorry, just sort of like how does that work? Um, so I
There's
guess
an oversimplification of the problem, basically.
yeah. So I think I mean um, I'd probably have somebody who really understands language quality. But I guess the interesting bit there is that it has to be on a strategic level. So it has to also understand what is quality conceptually, like for the end user, for the end buyer. Not necessarily talking about always. I mean, I think you have to have linguistic understanding, but you also have to have somebody who can extrapolate from that a bit. Personally, like I said, I always like very mixed teams. I like people that bring different qualities to the table. So I would probably have somebody with the more engineering mind because it's not my strength. It's not my personal strength. So I know I've got a gap to fill there, right? So if I could have somebody who brings that, but saying that again, the best ones I work with are the ones who also understand language.
Yeah.
So kind of bringing it all together then.
So with the like say I'm trying to think as well, would the engineering or tech person be the kind of mentality that has they need to have the respect for language and culture and that quality level as well, because if you have a team that's composed on the one hand of people who are into quality and on the other hand people maybe who are irreverent or disrespectful towards language and localization, for example, that's not going to work either. So you need to kind of share within the teams, right? And
Yeah, but I guess,
have a shared
yeah.
respect, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess now I mean, in a way, ultimately, I mean, again, if I hired my dream team, I would hire the right person. Like funny enough, I think we talked about it last time actually in this heated session. Um, Ultimately, you want to have somebody that you can work with, and they're just exactly respectful, humble, whatever. Or if you want somebody who's pushing and aggressive, if that's how you work,
What
then
do you
you're
like?
gonna go
Yeah.
for that. If you think you're not going to get very far in that kind of combination, then you find the people that you think you can work with well. I mean, sorry, that's very simplified, but it sort of worked well for me so far.
What would you say to LSP leaders who are worried about the ability of their team to adopt, or let's say acquire new knowledge and adopt new techniques and adopt new technologies? What advice would you give to people who are in that situation, who are not 100% sure if their team are going to be able to keep up with everything?
Um, yeah, I guess it sort of is a bit sort of again another sort of tricky one in a way, but I think it's sort of I believe that deep down, I mean, you said earlier everybody has to learn. I think deep down humans like to learn. Like we enjoy learning, we enjoy
Yeah.
learning, and I'm not saying we enjoy ditching out everything we already know, but we like to build and we like to show what we know, but we also like to do new things and bring them in. Some of us maybe more radically than others, but it's sort of that's a positive thing and what makes us human to an extent. So again, it's about creating the right framework and mood for that, like the right sort of and if people are say, oh, right now, and I don't even blame people who are right. They say I'm fed up with AI. I don't want to hear anything but about it's again, understandably because it's just so omnipresent. Um, but I think sometimes almost like doing like almost little exercises or games or bringing them in on a project where that happens and not, kind of letting them face it. Suddenly they'll learn something. Oh, that was actually fun. I didn't know that that's what it looks like. It's very often what you find out that, oh, I didn't know that this is what it is. And then suddenly it's not the scary beast. It's something very small, practical, you
Yeah.
know, it's not two letters that seem to take over the world. It's just something small, and more manageable, digestible, maybe.
Yeah, I think we all have this I think it's those basic needs, right? Like we like something that's certain, and then we also
Yeah.
like a degree of variety or change as well. And definitely we like to feel like we're learning. I remember you guys also talked about the way in which you could buddy up people. You could
Yeah,
put
yeah,
people
yeah. Mhm.
together, maybe one that was more technically inclined or one that wasn't so much, and kind of get them to collaborate, or one maybe that was newer to the industry that maybe didn't have preconceived kind of ideas,
Yeah.
and one that was not was had been there all the time, maybe as a way of getting people to knowledge share and spur each other on.
Yeah. And I think also, I mean, I don't know why this is suddenly popping into my head, but and I'm absolutely not an expert on this, but very often like mergers and acquisitions, right? You always hear how it goes wrong because one team is sort of like kind of the power player and the other one feels like they're just being, swallowed up or whatever. So that's a complicated dynamic that requires a lot of sensibilities to how to, deal with that situation. But again, with learning, it could be similar as long as you're sort of not just, I mean, I know there's an element at the moment of saying we have to push our teams to do this thing. And yes, there is a certain urgency or whatever around, I guess. But equally, if you're approaching these things with also listening to the other side, you know, not just saying my way is the highway, but saying, okay, hold on, how do you want to learn, or what do you think is again bringing people into the conversation is always going to make it more successful, I think.
I think smaller LSPs maybe have a little bit more, well, maybe a little bit more of a luxury in terms of how exposed they are, for example, to certain types of, big, huge enterprise clients who are
Yeah.
demanding the AI technologies very, very quickly. So in many cases, I mean, I think it's something like 80% of the market is made up within the small and medium-sized LSPs and spenders, right? So
Mm,
most of the work in the world is actually with the smaller agencies. And in one sense, that gives a certain degree of flexibility because, as you said earlier, the buyers are so diverse. They're not
mm,
all technical wizards. Okay, yes, every CEO is asking their teams to do more and more with AI, with LLMs, with different tools, but the range of buyers is very, very diverse as well.
mm,
Which I guess brings us on to, the fact that, okay, technology is out there, it's out of the box, it's in the public domain. People expect us to be able to talk about it. And every LSP now really needs to have some kind of technology story, right?
yeah, I mean, I think definitely, yeah, you need to have a story, I think is what we're saying, right? I mean, it's sort of yeah, you need to have a technology story. I think, sorry, while you were talking, I was sort of thinking, yeah, and your story could be, I'm not engaging, but
Yeah.
you have to have for sure a story. And I think what is important in that, I sort of, that's what I was just thinking about in that, and I think this is what the upskilling is partially about. One of the most important element of the upskilling is the whole literacy aspect and just making sure that whatever your story is or your angle, be sort of able to express that in terms of 2026, as it were. Kind of if you're saying whatever, I do not like X, Y, Z, or this is where I am, but if you use terminology of now, as it were, you're going to sound so much more professional and credible than
Yeah.
and if you're not. So I think that's kind of ultimately, what upskilling right now really as a foundation is kind of trying to make sure you're not just replying with old, kind of things nobody wants to hear anymore. Like just elevate the conversation and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we cover a little bit of that as well. We have a couple of modules on the sales and marketing side of things, so we do talk about a little bit about positioning and how to
Yeah.
sell or have these conversations with clients as well about AI or blended services as well.
Mm.
So hopefully there's something in there for everyone. Which was your favorite module to be part of? Was it the one about the linguists, or did you prefer a different one?
Um, what was my favorite module? Good question. I mean, I have personal topics that always, I mean, that I always have, I don't know, I've always been most sort of interested in sort of evaluation and even human evaluation, blah, blah, blah. Like I've done that for so many years. So I feel like I've just built, that's kind of maybe a bit where my personal focus has always been on. And because that's also such a perfect bringing together of different disciplines. Um, the favorite session, I don't know, I did also like in the very beginning, this really kind of where we sort of starting the conversation and going about the sort of the landscape, where are we actually now, and just sort of very broad strategizing in terms of understanding where people are. I think that's sort of, I quite like that phase almost, understanding where people are coming from, what are their pain points, and then really trying to take that in because it's sort of, yeah, it is really always a good reminder to understand what the problems are that people are facing. So I think that is really, for me, always really interesting, that part. And then trying to say, okay, how can you go from where you are to, let's say, implementation or um, taking the next step. So that strategy step, I like that. I enjoy that as well. But
Like you said, there's so much noise out there that it's good to help people situate where they are at the
yeah.
beginning so they
Mm,
can then get clarity on, okay, I'm actually not that far behind, or I need to do
mm.
this next. What would you say to people who are considering doing the course, but maybe think, God, I might be very behind at the moment? Like, what would you say to those people who are not sure about whether this is for them or not?
Firstly, probably you're not as far behind as you think if you're already thinking that in a weird way. You've probably already spent more thought on it than you realize. But also, well, equally flip side to that, well, then definitely sign up. Because again, this is supposed. I mean, sorry, it's such an overused phrase, safe space, blah blah blah. But it's sort of I would say what Magic Beans does really well is make sure that the whole no one left behind, like bringing people in and really
Yeah.
saying this is a space where we're trying to kind of almost create a bit of a buffer from the noise out there and focus in on what are we dealing with on a day to day. And you might never have even used machine translation because your position so far has been I do not want to. We're not saying you have to change it. That might be your story, but it's more about, again, equipping you with literacy to be better at telling that story, maybe. But equally, we had last time, we had quite a few people, I think that was my sense, who had maybe more passively sort of, plugged in AI, as it were, like so commonly, like, or had consumed it from their end client and now really wanted to say, hold on, we've been doing this, we've been servicing this, but we don't want to just be this passive player. We want to be a more active player. And I think that is actually a super interesting place to be in because it's all about that being an active partner to your
Mm.
client and having an opinion and being able to say, why are you using that tool for language X when my entire translator base for that language pair says if you use Y, you're going to get a much more, smooth operation here or whatever. So that's the conversation you're trying to get to. Like, okay, we've just, oh, well, they use Google and so there. And you said, well, now go back and make suggestions and have an exchange, and how this could work better for everybody.
Now I have a better idea for you. So it sounds fantastic. So you're going to be taking the lead again from April the 17th,
Yeah.
10 sessions every Friday. Every company who attends can bring their entire team. They can address their questions to you and to Elaine and the rest of the team. We are super thrilled to have you back for Reclaim 4. We have a lot of association partners signed up, and we're hopefully going to have a full house again. So, thanks, Lena, for sharing your insights with us today, and looking forward to seeing some of our listeners in April.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for having both Elaine and myself again.
Super. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll be in touch soon.